Today's episode of Darkness Radio is brought to you by Microdose. Get out of pain, get out of anxiety, and start treating yourself a little bit better. Try Microdose. Microdose is a CBD THC gummy that will get you out of pain, get you out of anxiety, and get you into feeling good again. To learn more about microdosing THC, go to microdose.com and use the code DARKNESS to get free shipping and 30% off your first order. Links can be found in the show description, but again, that's microdose.com, code DARKNESS. Welcome into the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm Tim Dennis. Got a good show. I know I say this every single time I have a show. Got a good show, and I promise that here today on the program. And a guy I've been looking forward to having on for quite some time. We've been kind of missing each other back and forth, but that's okay. You know what they say, what is it? Loneliness makes the heart grow fonder. So that's how we'll treat today. We're going to make the heart grow a little bit fonder today, as we've got a great guest on today. Nathaniel Gillis is with us today. He's a religious demonologist and author. After living in a haunted house, Nathaniel spent 20 years researching what it was he encountered. Nathaniel is the founder of Preternatural, I hope I got that right, I'm going to ask him when we get him on, Epiphenomenal Philosophy. Those are my lingual gymnastics for the day. Nathaniel has sought to redefine the nature of haunting phenomena, ghosts, and high strangeness. He's often quoted for his concept of the demonic. And the quote here is, "The reason they are playing by different rules is because they're playing a different game." I love that quote. Let's bring in now to the Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show, Nathaniel Gillis. Nathaniel, how are you?
Doing good. It's great to be with you guys at Darkness Radio. I was telling you before the show, I've done a lot of shows, but I haven't been able to have the honor being with you guys. So I'm glad to be here and excited to get into this research.
Well, it's our honor, my friend, to have you here. Like I said, we've just kind of missed each other. It's not been anything personal by any means. It's just been, scheduling. It's just been our schedule and just the way things have fallen. So that's all it's been. Mm-hmm. I tell you, I'm excited because anytime we can talk devil, demons, and what exactly they are, it's always an intriguing conversation. And I'm sure you know that. And one of the things that fascinates me, and we'll get into this a little bit later in the program, maybe the second half of the program, is the things that befall demonologists. I know this is one thing that you may make you kind of sit back in your seat a little bit and go, where are you going with this, Tim? But there tends to be a little bit of harm that becomes some demonologists at times. And I want to talk to you about personal health too, in the second half of the program, Nathaniel. But first, I want to talk to you a little bit about your paranormal experiences and what got you into the field. And we'll start out just slow at first. How old were you when you had that first paranormal experience?
I was 8 years old.
Wow.
Years old. Yeah, my parents said they were looking at buying a house, so they took me to an open house, led me into my future room, and just told me we're going to go talk to the realtor, look around, figure out where you're going to put your bed, your gaming system. And I can still remember, and I don't know why I did this, so no idea, but I felt led to get on my hands and knees and look underneath the bed that was in the corner. When I did, I was met face to face with a small, frail little girl. She had pale complexion, long black hair, was wearing a white linen dress that looked to have been made during the turn of the century. That was the first thing I remember from being in the room. The next thing I noticed was that the room had a pervasive stench about it. It wasn't like somebody left food out there in the heat of the summer. And it wasn't, there was a dead mouse or something. This was almost like a spiritual phenomenon. And so when we moved into the home, the entity mutated. It wasn't an actual ghost. It was an entity. It was a demon, I believe. And so it evolved in its victimology And so at the culmination of it all, it went from being a small little girl to a shadow figure to a smoky apparition that would kind of like, I don't know, float its way through my room and then ball itself up in a dark cloud in the corner of the room. It was a malevolent presence. I mean, I tell people in my shows that it was the darkest entity I've experienced in my career. Really? Very powerful. Yep. And so I went from being an eight-year-old kid, very innocent, to being 12, 13 years old and writing suicide poetry.
Wow.
Because the entity, very much so, was targeting me. And so, that was my first encounter with the phenomenon. I learned how to cope with its presence. I had actually written different questions down. So my research kind of went intimately with my experiences as a young person. So I began a research of the phenomenon at the same time I encountered it. So I guess that was a good thing. But that's about as early as I can remember.
Wow, so many questions come up now. So at first, as you're meeting the entity and it presents itself in somewhat human form, is it trying to entice you?
I don't know. I think that it's building trust. It's a little girl around my age. Mm-hmm. It was so interesting because I remember getting into the car on the way home and asking my dad, I didn't tell him anything yet, but I was just kind of poking around and said, does the family that's selling the house, do they have a little girl at all? Do they have any children at all? And because I started to kind of rationalize my way out of what I experienced. Nobody wants to be crazy. Nobody wants to be seen as crazy.
Sure.
And so at first I thought that it was either a child that belonged to the family that was selling the house. Then once I checked that one off the list, I thought, oh my God, what's next? And so then I told myself that it was a little girl from, the neighborhood. It is the family that sells the house. They leave the door open. The realtor gets there. So I don't know. I had no idea. I had no reference point for that. But yeah, I mean, when I start thinking about it, it's almost like it kind of conjures the trauma. Because I remember going to bed at nighttime and waking up to hearing something moving in front of my door, because we had wooden floors. And so I could hear it displacing its weight, but just like a person would. And so it would walk all the way up to my door, and then I could feel it enter my room. The way it feels was absolutely profound. It was deeper than consciousness. It was more demonic than what a demon, at least, was told to be to me. Okay. Completely different. It made me feel like the smallest particle in the universe. It filled every emptiness, every void in that room with its presence. And then I remember it, and this gets really deep really quick, because I just did a show on parasitic entities on my show, and this is what I told them, that in its presence, it would almost emit a fabricated fear.
Okay.
And then feed off of the fear that I'm feeling. So it was a very unique pathology with this entity. But growing up in that environment, I believe it gave me some form of immunity to this malevolent presence that we're all experiencing. So now when I go into houses, I mean, I've had cases where a murder just happened 2 weeks ago, and the police are still going in doing investigations. The carpet has just been cut up, and there's paranormal activity. So I've been in some dark places, but never, this is what's wild, never like that entity I encountered it as an 8-year-old kid.
That's crazy. Again, I want to dive just a little deeper with this, Nathaniel, because what fascinates me with it is starts as a girl, then a shadow figure, then gets into and morphs into a different being. As you see the shadow figure, obviously the fear ratchets up a little bit. You realize that this girl is something else. Yet you're still young, and as a youngster, we tend to think, okay, am I imagining things, or is this real? And you have to take this back to your parents. You would think you would have to take it back to your parents if you trust them enough. Do you take it back to your parents, and do you mention what it is?
Yeah, yes, I did. It's so funny. The teacher's always silent when the test is taken, and I know it's a cliche, but I do believe it fits in this personal case, because there were plenty of nights when, and I'm not ashamed, I was ashamed of it at the time, but I ain't ashamed of it now, brother. Mm-hmm. I would hear something moving. I would smell its presence. I'd feel it. There's one night with a shadow figure. I was playing video games. You know how it is when you have all the lights are off, even if you're watching TV and you're watching the TV and, you know, the bright lights are in your face, and then you turn to look at something. It takes a moment for your eyes to adjust.
Yep.
And then you're like, okay, that's what that is and all that stuff. Well, I'm playing my video game system and I see something out of the corner of my eye, my peripheral vision, something moves. And I don't know. I'm like, okay, what's that? You know, what is that? You know, it's like, is it my cat? I don't know. I look over, and as I look over, there's a shadow figure looking at me through my window.
Oh.
And so my eyes are adjusted, and I'm thinking, like, again, I'm not thinking it's a shadow figure. I didn't even know they existed, right? And so I'm looking, and all of a sudden my eyes zoom in on it, and when I do, it was almost as if he acknowledged, oh, he can see me, and then he just tilted its head, and bam, he's gone. Now, what's so fascinating about this is it was in the wintertime. The next day I got up for school and walked out, and there were big footprints in front of my window. But my window still started at 7 foot. Whoa, I got chills, right?
Right.
What was that? What was that?
Whoa. That is big. That is huge.
Yeah. So it's almost, and I think it gets really deep, and there are many implications here, many possibilities. Was this entity kind of inviting me to understand the phenomenon more? Because that means that this wasn't just some ghostly apparition, that there was physicality to it. All right. So it possessed different attributes of what we would consider to be entirely different phenomena.
Right.
It had shoes, it had physicality, it had a skeletal body, it was a shadow figure. So how do we make sense of that? It makes no sense at all.
No.
You know, if we limit ourselves to the dogmatism that at least some of us believe in. So I don't know what it was. I know that it mutated, and that at a certain point there before the very end, I was staying up the whole night. I was going to school the next morning, but I would turn all my lights on and I would try to sleep. Whenever I would go into a dream, it wasn't like a normal dream. You know, as you eat Taco Bell, you dream something stupid, or you realize you left X-Files on or whatever, and you have some freaky dreams. This was completely different. This is when I'm 9 years old. And again, I have to stress this because this is how evil works. I had no frame of reference for drug addiction. Right?
Right.
I still thought I was going to get cooties from girls. I was so innocent, you know?
Right.
I didn't know what suicide was. I didn't know what a 357 Magnum was. And so in the dream, it was always in black and white. I was floating towards a shelter in a park. And there were two guys, two kids, about maybe 17 or 18. They're sitting down by each other. Both of their backs are turned towards me. The one on the right looks behind me, grins, looks back over, and jams a needle in his arm. Right. I didn't know what heroin was.
Jeez.
Right. So it's fascinating to me. Not at the time, though. The other kid, he turns around and he makes eye contact with me, and he holds eye contact with me. And then once I get close enough to him, he pulls out a black 357 Magnum, turns around to me, puts it in his mouth, and pulls the trigger. Instantly, I wake up and I'm shivering cold, and I'm paralyzed in fear. Like that entity, it was almost like this. It was almost like it was staring right in my eyes, but I couldn't see it. I knew it was there. So when I tell people that some of these beings will create and orchestrate a traumatic experience and then feed off of the terror. So it is almost, it's deeper than a psychopath. It's almost like a sadist entity. And the only, with these particular beings, the only pathology I've noticed that mirrors them would be that of a serial killer, where they'll sit back and watch the terror. And then, I don't know. So that was my experience with it. Thank God it left. It got to a point where I crawled up in the ball in the middle of a room, and I was failing my class. I was writing suicide poetry. I had basically secluded myself from my parents. I wasn't eating much. So it was dwindling me down to just nothingness.
Let me ask you about the suicide poetry for a moment, because as this thing, as you've mentioned, Nathaniel, as it got into your dreams, and as it is given you these images of you know, a youngster shooting up heroin, another one putting a gun in its mouth and pulling a trigger. Do you feel that you were influenced to write this poetry out of nowhere? Because as you said, you had no frame of reference.
Right. So here's what was going on. So there were a couple times where I got in trouble in school and I didn't do anything.
Okay.
You know, somebody else, a buddy of mine was like, "I'm gonna go." I went to a Christian school, right?
Right.
So we were all like in nice areas. Nobody had a rough life or anything. But some of the guys I hung out with, they wanted to experience that, you know. Mm-hmm. So, you know, this one kid's like, "We're going to go jump our buddy." And I'm like, "That's my friend. I ain't doing it." So I'm sitting there hanging out, playing basketball. My buddy jumps him. And then when he gets in trouble, I'm in the principal's office. I didn't even do anything. I'm over here playing basketball. I have witnesses. So they tried to get me to write sentences. And I told them, I'm not doing it. I'm not writing sentences.
Yeah.
Go to the principal. Tell the principal I said that. I didn't do anything wrong. So they couldn't get me to write sentences. But when I would go home, I'd go downstairs in my basement where the presence was the most felt. I'd pull out a notebook and I'd start writing thoughts that weren't mine, right? And it was bad, like a sense of bad self-image, low self-esteem. And so it took me a while to realize that a lot of these thoughts were not mine. Mm-hmm. It was the entity. And that throughout my experience with it, that they'll send, I knew that they'll send thoughts to you to see if you'll agree with them. And then once you start agreeing with their thoughts, that's when possession starts to come into play, because there's going to come a time when it's not satisfied thinking for you. Now it's going to step into your body, stretch itself in your skin, and it's going to act. And that's what possession is. It's when it's bled so much into your consciousness that you would no longer have the ability to determine whose thoughts are yours and whose thoughts are that entity's. And so it was a profound moment in my life, but I think it had to happen because I've been doing this for 3 or 4 years, just in the paranormal field and shows and everything. And hundreds of people have been helped from my story. So I think that I had to go through that to gain some insight to help other people. So I also believe that it was targeting me, right? Mm-hmm. Hoping that I would end my life so we wouldn't be doing a show right now.
I like that perspective, because what better way to get rid of your enemy than to infiltrate your enemy and destroy them from within? Right.
I
understand.
And that's the battle a lot of people are in right now. I just did my show. We had 20,000 views in 2 days. And it's big numbers, but it wasn't like, okay, no, it was a topic. The topic was something that was germane and relevant to people. Mm-hmm. People are really experiencing this in real time, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's the being that I encountered. And I don't know if it was a battle course, if it was a teaching class for me. I don't know, but I'm a survivor.
You are. You completely are. You know, you say that the entity went away, but I'm curious as to why. What stepped into your life that this entity felt like? Obviously, it wasn't that it had no more use for you, because you had bought in at one point. You had started writing the suicide poetry. So obviously, you found a reason to make contact with it or to channel it at one point. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I know where you're going with this. Good point.
Yeah. So follow my lead here, my friend, and tell me why it felt the need to leave. Something had to step in here.
Yes, there was what I call a battle over soul ownership, and that can, have two different meanings there.
Okay.
Soul ownership over me and my future. As the more the battle for my life and whatever, the more it became more intense it became, the more I began to step into my own giftings. So I would be out with people and I'd stop spending, hey, listen, I just saw this. Can I talk to you about it? Dead accurate. I'd be going out to my family and stop a lady. Hey, listen, there's a man with black hair in your house laying in a bed. He's very sick. I don't know what's going on. Just want you to know that your family loves you and they appreciate what you're doing. Tears, my husband has terminal illness and, he has the darkest hair you'll ever see in your life. So the more I was stretching myself into new dimensions of gifting, and I'm going to say this loosely because I don't want people to say, okay, he's a evangelical guy. No, but the more I was stepping into my gifting and ministry, mm-hmm. ministering to people, the more I started realizing, catching thoughts in midair. Boom, that's not mine. Send it back.
Okay.
Right. And so there came a time one evening, like I said, when I was crawled up in the ball in the middle of the room, and I just started crying, and I said, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm tired. I'm physically tired. I'm mentally wore out. I'm cut off from my family, and I don't know anything else I could do. Like, I was at my wit's end. And it was at that moment that I felt that entity walk in the room again. But it wasn't like he intended to victimize me anymore. It was almost like he just wanted me to know he was there. And then so I prayed, and I said, God, it's a very simple prayer. I said it, but it worked. I said, God, I don't know what this is, and I don't know why it's here. All I know is I need your help. It wasn't, the big elaborate prayers you hear on TV. Father, it's the holiest oneness. It was very simple, right?
Right.
As soon as I did, it was as if a light, it wasn't like I saw it, but I could feel a warmness enter the room. And it was so powerful that the darkness just dissolved. Gone.
Okay.
And sometimes, this is so interesting, sometimes I'll have cases, because I work with a lot of people. So I'll have somebody I'll talk to, family will call me about a 6-year-old son or something. I'll be on the phone with them, and I'll feel that entity. Wild. I'll know it. Hey, yeah, by the way, I had a 6-year-old girl. I was working with her family for a long time. And they called me out of the blue. It was like 2 a.m. And they said, our daughter is experiencing something. We don't quite understand it, but can you talk to her? I said, okay, fine. Obviously, she's on minor. Parents are on the phone. And so I'm talking to her. And for 45 minutes, I don't feel a lick of anything.
Okay.
No insight. And I call it unction. No unction, nothing. And I'm thinking, man, I'm doing my best to help this girl out. I don't know what's going on. While I'm talking to her at the very end, I'm about to hang up, hope I helped you, the pleasantries and kind of, okay, we're done. As soon as I get done, about to hang up the phone, I felt something walk by and touch my arm. And it was that. People might not believe this, whatever. It was that entity I conquered as a kid. And as soon as I felt it, I called it out. I just felt a spirit of suicide walk by me and touched me on the arm. When I did that, the daughter just started bursting into tears. I've been fighting. She had been holding it back on. I've been fighting it for months. I have my notes are in my booklet and everything, my purse. I was going to do it and get it over with. But that's how, like I said, what I grew up in, it taught me a certain sensitivity to some of these entities, to where if I'd have never experienced what I experienced, I wouldn't be able to help people in the way I have been able to. So I think it's one of the reasons I console myself.
I see. Well, now, whether it's the same entity or a similar entity, do you find that eventually it has to reveal itself to you, whether you call it out or not?
It has. I've been in cases where an apparition manifests and confessed to me, hey, this is what that entity is. So this phenomenon is very strange. It's not limited to dogmatism, at least the dogmatism I grew up in. It bleeds itself into different lines. But yes, I think that in some cases, I think that even if it doesn't want to manifest to me, there it is, that's by the feeling, the kind of energy that it produces. So I think that the deeper I get into the research, I've encountered that the same kind of pathology in demonic cases. So whether it's a pathology that they all share, or if it's just exclusive to that one entity, I don't know. But it's perceivable. It's very much obvious to me.
Okay. Tell you what, Nathaniel, at this point, we'll take our break. When we come back, I want to ask you a few questions about the different types of these entities that you're coming up against, what it is exactly you're coming up against, because although we won't have to speak any of their names, we could classify them to some extent. You never want to say the name, by the way, kids, if you're out there listening to this program, never want to say the name of a demon. It's very dangerous. But also, I do have one question that I want to ask you before we go to break, and that is, you said that through this process in your early beginnings, you had lost your family. I want to clarify that in that, was it through kind of making contact through that first entity? Had you put some space or distance between your family and they just didn't know how to deal with you, or has that
Yes.
has that fence been mended now?
Oh, of course, yeah, we're real tight.
Okay, good.
Yeah, but at that time, I mean, arguments were not just arguments. It was, you know, I'm locking myself in the room and I'm not eating. We're done. I'm going to go kill myself. That kind of thing. And people are going to listen to this show and they're going to probably discount me and whatever. He should be here if he's talking like that. Whatever. People go through things. They all do. We all do. But yeah, it marked me. I think it marks a lot of people who have the empathic nature. They don't want to deal with us. So they want to, sometimes they want us to sacrifice ourselves too.
Okay.
So I'm just glad to be here with you.
And we're glad to have you as well, my friend. When we come back, I'm going to ask you a devil's advocate question off the top of the break. Not trying to get confrontational, but it's a very important question that a lot of my audience may ask you or would want to ask you. So I'll ask it right off the top, and we'll start off a little hot here, Nathaniel, when we come back. When we come back, more with Nathaniel Gillis. And Nathaniel, you have two books out there, A Moment Called Man and The Skin That Crawls. Tell people, not only will we put a link here in the description of this program, but tell people where they can pick up your books.
So we're looking at Amazon, and The Moment Called Man was inspired by a friend of mine who lost his life to addiction. He's an empath. He grew up in church, nice guy. In that book, A Moment Called Man, I start talking about what I call the disfigurement of destiny and how people like me as a young kid, they'll hurt for others and they'll not understand why. They're just completely immune to it. So I go through that book and help people through their issues with that. The second one, The Skin That Crawls, I link, this is my deepest research yet, I link the possession phenomenon to the missing fetus syndrome. And I lay out case after case after case that really tells a story that this phenomenon's been here for thousands of years. Whether we're dealing with demons or aliens, I think it doesn't matter to me. We're just dealing with the same. Whatever we're dealing with, they're the same. So that's what that second book, The Skin That Crawls, is about.
Okay, great. When we come back, more with Nathaniel Gillis right here on the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. Welcome back to the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm Tim Dennis. Our guest is Nathaniel Gillis, and we're talking about his line of specialty, which is demonology. And we're talking about different devils, demons, and unclean spirits with a twist that he believes that there could be a connection to different things out there, including implants found in people who have been abducted by aliens or the soul hunter himself. We'll go into that in the second part of this program here. First, Nathaniel, I want to hit you with a question I know my audience may be asking or even screaming through their listening device right now, and that's this. And don't take this wrong, my friend. This is a devil's advocate question, which is this, having gone through the first part of the program. It's simply this. Having been compromised as a youth, and mind you, having defeated this entity, but yet being compromised, aren't you afraid that being a demonologist now, you could be compromised again? Are you in the best position to be fighting these type of entities?
I think that there's no better position to be in it than outside of someone who's an experiencer as well as a researcher. It's an age-old question. I mean, it goes back to Yeshua HaMashiach in the first century, physician, heal thyself. Mm-hmm. Right? And so I think that there's a problem here. The perception of what a demonologist is. It doesn't matter if you're going to be compromised in the sense of your position as a human being. When you look at it, the phenomenon, it looks back into you. So there is a portion of this where you cannot control. There's going to be a confrontation. In terms of compromise, I don't know how compromised I was in the sense that I nailed it. I realized what was happening. Right. Mm-hmm. So that would be my response. I think that there's a lot of people who have knowledge from the head. They have head knowledge. This is what I have heart knowledge too. I'm an experiencer of it. And so it's hard even for people that go in to watch Conjuring movies, nothing against it. We can have movies all day long about what we think it felt like in the room until you've actually experienced the phenomenon. you can have the same manifestations on a screen without feeling that profound consciousness that seeps into the soul. What do we have but description? So I believe that I don't really know if I was compromised in the sense of, oh my God, I mean, yeah, maybe I had faults, but, I also caught their faults too. Oh. And so that's why I'm able to tell people, as a person who's experienced this himself, yes, I know what they're dealing with, and I know how to help them to conquer some of these entities at least.
Good answer. I like that. It's hard because a lot of the demonologists that I talk to on the show have either come from the position of, I shouldn't say possession, I didn't mean to say it, that was a slip, position of holy men who have attacked it, or laymen who are inspired to get into the field because they want to do good, but not a lot have come from the position of having been there, done that. You don't get a lot of people who have said, you know what, I've been attacked, I've survived it, and I feel stronger for it. And not only can I discern it, but I want to go after it. Right.
I'm no longer the victim. I'm no longer the prey. I'm almost in a sense the predator now. Yeah. And I've experienced that in my career, but being an experiencer doesn't make me better. And not being an experiencer doesn't make me better. It doesn't make any, we're all in the same boat here. We're all looking at the same phenomenon, trying to get a best understanding of it. It's the age-old question you asked. They asked Dr. Carla Turner that because she was abducted, and everybody said, listen, since you were abducted, it might pollute your perception of the phenomenon. So there's always been this war between, I never experienced it. So I don't really buy into that. But yeah, I'm an experiencer.
Yeah. Let me throw this one your way, and that's this. Try not to lose my train of thought here. And that's this, that, you have this experience of chasing these entities, and it seems like these entities are along the same strength level, and we'll just put it at the same level of evil as the one that took you on. Is there a fear that, much like different level of video games, you're going to work yourself up to a level that you just can't conquer? Is that a fear that is a fear of yours?
To a certain degree, it is. About 4 months ago, I kind of just set all my research aside. I think I got too close to them. I reached out to a couple of my mentors, and even people that didn't even know me, that I respect. And I said, hey, listen, I'm going to throw this at you. Tell me whatever you want to tell me. I had gotten 2 emails from 2 different people. They had listened to 2 different shows of mine. They were both experiencers. They, to my knowledge, they didn't know each other existed. But they said basically the same words verbatim to me. I watched your show and I think you're wrong. But my guides have told me that they'll be waiting for you when you die.
Oh.
2 emails within 2 or 3 hours from each other. And, I think that's due to my research in the light that I'm shining in the darkness. And perhaps I got too close. So I've been warned by them. Absolutely. I've been warned by them.
How does that make you feel when you get that close that soon and you see that?
Inspired. Well, at first I was pretty shooken up, man. I'll be honest with you. I called my dad. I said, man, I don't know what's going on. I mean, it's one thing to get 1 email, right? But a second individual who doesn't even know the first one, and they're saying the same things. One thing, I think it validates my research. Mm-hmm. It makes everything that I've been doing worth it. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, yeah, it is unnerving because I don't want to I don't want to wake up in the middle of the night and have something there that is, hey, listen, I'm a higher part of the hierarchy here. We got to talk, So that possibility remains, and it's always remained for every demonologist that's ever lived, every exorcist, every researcher of this phenomenon. We all bear the responsibility of it and the possibility of encountering something that is wholly other, as Rudolf Otto would call it, something that transcends the microcosm of even our belief systems. We don't even have a vocabulary to describe what they are. Possibility always exists for that. But me, I'm passionate. I'm full of passion. And I have such a drive to understand what these things are. And I'll tell you something else. It's very interesting. Crowley said this, not that I'm a prescriber of what he likes and all that stuff.
Sure.
I'm not a proponent of his research. However, he did proclaim a principle amongst them. This is fascinating to me. If they respect you, it's different. Mm-hmm. They may hate your guts, but they'll respect you in a sense.
Very true.
Yeah, I've had that in kind of myself, you know. And so I think that once you get to a certain level of research, while they may hate you, it would be more of a diplomatic manifestation of, hey, you know, not something I'm going to push you down the stairs. I don't know. I think that's what occurs sometimes. I don't know why I haven't been taken out, and I don't know that it won't be. But I'm never been worried about that. What I'm worried about is just piercing the veil and getting as much knowledge to the right people as possible. I think that's my calling.
You know, you bring up an interesting point. In all the time that I've talked to different demonologists, they say that these things will manifest themselves in hope that they can draw fear out of a demonologist. But a lot of times it's just a calling card to let them know that, hey, I'm around the corner. You're going to meet me soon on a case.
Right.
A lot of times it's just
premonitions or nightmares.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's just, you'll see me soon. And that's all it is. It's in the hopes that they can establish fear in you before you see them. But what a lot of what you've told me in the roughly 35 minutes that you and I have been talking is that you haven't shown them fear. So there's no reason to really sit here and say, well, you know, that they're going to show you a calling card because what response are they going to get out of you? You know,
right.
You know, they're not instilling anything in you to give you that little bit of a startle so that they can rattle you down the road. You know, the two different people who come to you and say they're going to be waiting for you. To me, that seems like a message that's passed on to someone else as a calling card to try and rattle you.
Exactly right. And I think that goes back to my childhood where I realized that a lot of this fear is propaganda. There's a prophet that my dad knew in the evangelical movement who was not like, okay, I'm on TV and out there throwing, this guy was legit. Okay, I'm talking like fasting once a month, just incredible, months at a time. And he was just really powerful. But he told my dad something that really added to my knowledge. He said that the spirit of fear is the weakest. What? And so that's why when getting into some of these pathologies that I've been studying, they're not afraid. Okay, it's not that they want us to fear them the most, right? I mean, they'll use fear as a weapon, as a tool. They're not afraid of people that don't fear them as much as they are afraid of people that want to understand them.
Right.
That's when you really get on their radar. They're working overtime to get your attention, to get you out of the way, to either convince you you're not called, right, or to make you in your life and just take care of you. That's why I'm here, you know. That's why I study. I study behavioral patterns. I don't study names. I don't study, you know, different religions in the sense of their dogmas, because I think if we lift the veil of terminology, then we'll start to see that there are bloody footprints in the snow and that these beings are the same entities. Whether we want them to be or not, they are. And I think that here's what they've been doing. They've been living in the ignorance of dogmatism. They veil themselves under different titles and terms. So as long as we have one victim of incubi, they never talk to an abductee, you know, we'll never get the full story. We'll never realize that these are both the same kind of victims, the same pathologies, i.e. the same entities. So as long as we keep them separated to where they'll never talk to each other at conventions, they're doing their job.
I want to dig into that further in just a second. I have one last question to ask you in this line of where we were going here, and then I want to jump to what it is exactly that you're talking about, because it seems like they're all along the same line here. And that's this, Nathaniel. When a demonologist is at a crossroads, when they think that, not that they're out of answers, but maybe that they need advice or they need to move forward in their research or forward in their growth. Either one. They could be one and the same or different. There's only two paths you could think they would go. One would be to a master in the craft, whether it be someone older who's had more experience or one who's taken on, or had more hours in the craft. The other would be to faith, which would be obviously something you would think would just be the automatic. One would be to spend more time in meditation and faith, that would be the main tool in the toolbox to defeat a demon, you would think. I would ask you personally, when you are either growing or you're looking to solve an issue that maybe you've come to your end with, which path do you take? The path of the master and going to ask them, or the path of faith?
I would go both directions. Okay. I would also go forward and I would go inward. One of the things that I do, I love to do this, is I have tons of notes throughout the years. I'll go and read my notes again, and I'll try to remember everything I forgot. And then, like I said before, when I was attacked, I'll go to people that I consider mentors in the field. Have you ever experienced this in your research? What do you think about this? How should I respond? And as far as the faith part, there are a handful of principles that I inherited from the organization I grew up in. Mm-hmm. And I say this with all kindness to them, a handful. It's being very generous, because I don't like many of them, mm-hmm. to be honest with you. And I kind of lean heavily on those pillars. I find wholeness and truth in those. And so, growing inward is me looking at my old information, and then I lean on the faith and mentorship. And then I go outward and I look for new knowledge, something I've never read before that has relevance to this topic. And especially sometimes when I get too deep in the darkness, I'll shut off my shows and I'll book a flight to where I want to go. I usually go to Rhode Island for a week and go down there and eat a bunch of Italian food with my friends. Mm-hmm. And just, binge on be Nate for a little bit, and then come back, and then with fresh eyes and fresh passion, inspiration, then dive deeper than I was before then.
Mm-hmm. And, you're finding your own spiritual center that way.
Right. Yeah. That's how I balance who I am and who I'm called to be.
Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds like you're taking the less woo-woo way is the way that one of my guests would have said. I had a psychic on Tuesday, on True Crime Tuesday, who is a mom who was a furniture designer and basically said she was wrapped in science until she was forced to become a psychic and find kids that were murdered. And find their bodies. And she said she just didn't believe in that woo-woo crap because she was grounded in the here and now. Yeah. But she was just given a psychic gift because these little children spirits were coming to her and wanting to talk with her. So, it's one of those things where, you can remain somewhat skeptical yet still do your job. It's kind of kind of a weird thing.
And that's how you know it's a calling and not just a curiosity.
True. Very true. Yeah. So you've kind of thrown out this hint that you're saying that these demons or these unclean spirits or these entities maybe something a little more than just a demon or an unclean spirit, that they may have some basis in the physical. Take me down that road, Nathaniel, as to where your research leads.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I get excited, man. So like I said, I look at pathology and sexual pathology.
Okay.
And growing up as a Christian, I was told one thing: these are all demons. It didn't matter if they abducted Barney and Betty Hill. It didn't matter if it was Bob or Betty Luca. It didn't matter. These were all horns and hooves. And then once I started getting into the literature, I realized that, okay, that's either a lie or we're just missing pieces of the problem here. What's happened is that we have limited ourselves again to terminology. Mm-hmm. And what I found out about these entities is they don't really care what you call them, as long as you'll never know who they really are. And so I would like to invite everybody to imagine that you're in a very, very dark room. And there's something in the corner of that room that seems to be imperceivable to you.
Okay.
And so when it does manifest, it manifests as either an alien or a demon. It doesn't really want you to understand what it is.
Okay.
Because it's only giving you two options. So what I've been telling people lately is that it's more alien than alien, and it's more demonic than a demon. Whatever it is, it's like, I forget his name now. Anyways, whatever it is, it's manipulating our perceptions of it. In the sense that, like I said, if we can go to Paracons and we can talk to incubi victims, and as long as the incubi victim will never talk to an abductee and align their stories and say, hey, I went through the same thing, until that actually occurs, then everybody's going to be having lectures about, hey, this is a demon and this is an alien. I would like to suggest that once we get rid of the terminologies and get to their pathology, that's when we start to read through the propaganda that they have been employing in the field. If it's all demons and not aliens, we're limited. If it's all aliens and not demons, we're equally as limited. Here's what the data says. The data says that they are evolving according to our awareness of them. And even deeper, that they're stepping into roles that we're giving them. Okay. If you want me to be a demon, I will. But over here, I'm doing what I really want to do. So I need to strip us from the dogma and stare into the data. That's really what my calling is.
Okay. So I'm gonna try to separate and then coagulate these together so that we can come to the conclusion that you've come to, because while I see where you're going with it and I'm picking up what you're putting down, I also am a little bit confused. I won't lie. So you're saying that we're taking dogma and making demons, and we're taking what we believe to be alien and true alien experiences and making them alien, although there are a lot of experiencers out there of alien abductions. And we'll start with this first. That would tell you, I know what I experienced and I know what's very real. That I've had things implanted in me, that I've had, I've had multiple visits, that very real things have been done to me. And some people who swear they've had even alien human hybrid children, which is, I guess I've never heard of a demonic human hybrid child, but are you saying that that's the same thing?
Same thing. And that, again, that's because of the field. We were told they're separate. That's because nobody really read the literature. The literature suggests they're one and the same. Matter of fact, in Hebrew literature, we have what's called the Dybbuk or the Dibuk. And if you were to go out to even some of the best researchers out there, the Dybbuk, and this is about as deep as they get, a Dybbuk box, right? And the guy went to an antique shop, bought a wine box, and that's the full width and breadth of a Dybbuk. No, it's not. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. In the 16th century, let's paint this picture like it should be painted. Let's ask ourselves if this sounds like the missing fetus syndrome, right? Okay, in the 16th century, we had a phenomenon in Israel where women were being accosted in the middle of a night by an entity that had manifested itself in the image of a former lover. When they woke up the next day, what they thought was a dream was real. They had markings. They had physical manifestations of something that happened to them. Then they became possessed by consciousness that was not theirs. So the entity that had accosted them, see how it's evolving in its pathology, now had possessed them. And so as they're wrestling with what are called shared memories, we see that a lot in UFO abduction. While they're doing all of this, they're going through the motions of possession. They present themselves to the exorcists. And the exorcists know that they're pregnant. The baby is in the womb. Hello, missing fetus syndrome. To the point that they were performing what's called the lavouche, where they would take their fingers and put it on the wrist. They would have 2 heartbeats and 2 pulses in one body. And then, just as they're starting to realize what's going on, the consciousness leaves. And with the consciousness, so does the fetus. It's gone. both of them at the same time. Now, that's demonological literature.
Okay.
We'll never hear that being taught in ufology because that's, religious. They try to, all that stuff. But that is this phenomenon has been occurring since biblical antiquity. And that is what we would call the missing fetus syndrome. Now, again, what we've done is we would say that's a demon, not an alien. Same thing, right? Same experiences, same manifestations, same pathology. Mm-hmm. I'd go deeper with those all day long, but that's a fascinating question.
Well, I appreciate you answering it because that makes a little more sense. Now, the one thing I've never got is, especially in ufology, is the kidnapping of humans to experiment on them, and especially cattle mutilations. I don't get the cattle mutilation deal either, but the idea of experimentation has always been sexualized to the point of reproduction. But they never quite get to the end point of what it's about.
Why? Okay.
Why?
All right. Well, let's go back to what a demon was before we were told what a demon was. What was a demon? What are the earliest texts that we have of it? Well, in linguistics, we have what it's called a dialectical allomorph. It's an academic term, which means that you can have a word that has a different phonetic rendering, a different way of saying it, different pronunciation, and a different spelling. But it means the same thing that another word means, right? So they're different in how you pronounce them and their spelling, but they mean the same thing. Does it make sense?
Yep.
So the earliest text of a demon that we have prior to it being called a demon was in the Atreus' epic. It's the Babylonian flood story. And it talks about how, this is fascinating because this gets into apparitional theory. Oh, the ghost of a man is made from the flesh of a god. What? Brilliant, right? Makes you think like, okay, then what is an apparition? Does it have a tangible quality to it? Is spirit actually the flesh of an evolved being? Right? What is a ghost? A true disincarnate, disembodied entity. And so what we had throughout history was that our ancient ancestors believed that there were certain entities, people, that could mold their bodies and then they would evolve into a new being. However, there were certain beings that needed a body to inhabit. So here comes into play the necessity for new bodies. Matter of fact, in Mesopotamia, in high magic, they had a ritual called the red rite. And let's see if this sounds like anything we've heard of in the abduction phenomena and the debook phenomena.
Okay.
The red rite was when a high magician, when his body was dying, he would go and create a relationship with a woman. We would call that an incubi. An incubus.
Yep.
Then it would inseminate her, hello UFO abduction, and create a fetus in her, hello hybridization. And then at a certain time, it would dislocate his body, take the fetus that it had implanted, missing fetus syndrome, and possess it as its own body. Now, that's what we would call possession, but we didn't really understand that. See, possession is pregnancy to these entities. It's a way of self-replicating their species.
Okay.
Even deeper than that, when we get with Betty Luca, Betty Luca was an experiencer. Betty Luca is with them on the ship, and she asked one of them, "Where do you get these graves?" And they say, "Well, we get those from the fetuses." So there are so many parallels and connections that it's no longer, okay, does it exist? Now it exists. How can we put the information together to where it's fluid enough? Does it make sense?
It does make sense. Yes. Yeah. So, help me out with wrapping my head around cattle mutilations and animal mutilations. Then, is this? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nathaniel.
No. Well, I think that again, if these are the ancient gods that have been demanding sacrifices from us for millennia, then we were performing their mutilations for them. But if you notice, as soon as the sacrifice stopped, that's when all of these manifestations of them taking and harvesting come to be.
Okay.
There's a secondary issue that if you notice, especially with the cattle mutilation, it's not just the cattle mutilation, It is the fact that a lot of these animals are being put under such stress that's almost irrational.
Yeah.
Where, like with Skinwalker Ranch, they had footage, at least, of an invisible entity doing something to a cow. And the cow was literally just terrified.
Yeah.
Like worse than it would be if it was encountered like a lion or something. So I think there is something to that. But I'm not sure what it is. My focus, to be honest with you, is more or less into the missing fetus syndrome and how both of these phenomena are intimately connected throughout history. I've had cases of that.
And that in itself is a little mind-blowing. I'm not going to lie. It's the fact that missing fetus syndrome connects the two and connects them so, I hate to say seamlessly and easily. I don't know why.
That's what it's about, brother. High five. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
That's research, right?
You're right.
And it's there, even to the point, let me throw this section real quick, and now I'm getting passionate. And so watch this. So one of the earliest texts we have of the missing fetus syndrome and the hybridization program comes from the Apocrypha of John. It's a Coptic manuscript written and preserved by the Egyptian monks.
Mm-hmm.
It's said that their women were being visited in the nighttime or put into a dream state, and that these entities were manifesting to them in the images of their husbands. This is dark.
Mm-hmm.
And then so the husband would be out working or whatever, getting dinner for them to eat, whatever. It would manifest to her in the image of the husband, and then it would initiate, you know what I mean, coition, copulation.
Yep.
And at the very moment of insemination, it would stare into the eyes of the victim and then reverse its apparition to what it really looked like, which was whatever that entity was. Okay. Now, that looking in the eyes is a behavioral pattern throughout history. Lamashtu, the baby snatcher, would do the very same thing while it was taking child. What? Same stuff, same technology, same pathology, right? Mm-hmm. It's there. And so while it was staring into the eyes of the woman, it was invoking a ritual. It's called the obstetric tradition. Here's the concept. Whatever man the woman is looking at the moment of conception, she will birth the material image of through her womb as a child. It's going to blow your mind. So imagine this. If the entity wanted to have a fetus that looked like the husband, right? You follow me?
Yep.
It would have, still looked like the husband. That's not what it wanted. It wanted a material image of its own apparition. That was the self-replication program. And so now what you have, and Christianity they get it right, but they get it wrong. How can Yeshua be the immaterial image of the Father? How can it be the Father in Yeshua, right? So all that. Here's where we're at. You have the material image as the Son, and you have the consciousness in it as the Father. And so these entities were creating bodies to possess as their own, that they could wear in what we would call possession literature, a social skin. Now, they've been doing that sexual pathology for years. I had a case in India where a girl said that she said, she goes, this entity has been kind of manifesting to me and things. And she said, but it manifests to me in the images of all of my lovers. Right? Mm-hmm. Why? Because it's increasing the probability of insemination. It's a game. It's a very sinister game. But and I don't want to keep rambling.
No,
but
it
is
you're
an
not
act
rambling.
of self-replication. No. Self-replication 100%. And I say this because this is how they treat women, not as how I perceive them, obviously. Mm-hmm. But they treat them as breeders.
Okay.
And it's quite disturbing.
So this brings up an interesting question here then, Nathaniel. When you say that, not to separate the two, demons or aliens, we've always been told there's different races of aliens. That you have your blonde Nordics, you have your lizard people or whatever you want to call them. You have your grays, you have your different races. Is it possible that this is all just one race and they're morphing into different looks for different people the way they want to see them?
Yes, even more than that, it's quite probable. We have case studies right now where people are being abducted and the entity manifests. And I got a story to tell you this after this too. It's going to blow your mind.
Go ahead.
Manifest as a gray, and then when the entity turns sideways, they look at what it really was. It was projecting the gray image to the person.
Really?
Yes. So I am a proponent of what's called the unified field theory, where we're looking at the same entities, but they're wearing different masks. They're feeding into our dogmas, which it points to them being a lot more capable than we want to give them credit for, to where they will, okay, that mask doesn't work. I'll give you something fresh.
Yeah.
You believe in that? Okay, now we're getting into what are we really experiencing when we're experiencing these beings? So, okay, in one side of the field, we have women that are saying, okay, they came to me in the image of my husband, and we made love. And at the very end of it, I realized that wasn't my husband at all. And then the next day, they're wondering, if that wasn't my husband, then whose baby am I carrying? Even deeper. I had a case where an individual, he called me. I was doing a lecture about incubi spirits and how Father Sinistrari found people where these entities had carved symbols underneath their eyelids. And so I was dealing with various scarifications in the field. He said, man, because I got to tell you about my dad. I said, okay. He said, my dad was a remote viewer, and he would go out of his body and meet his guides, his quote unquote guides.
Okay.
And he said he would get information, he would get back into his body, and then he would dispel that information to local celebrities and local politicians. He said one night, my dad got back into his body. He stumbled down the stairs of the house. He was incoherent, crying, white as a ghost. He had a massive heart attack. Now, this is a game changer, and I need everybody to hear this. Please, please hear this. When they got into the hospital, they took his shirt off to put his robe on. Subdermal manifestations began to occur on his chest. Underneath the skin, these religious amulets, this is why I'm telling you, we're thinking demonology is exclusive. They're using our knowledge against us. Subdermally, so underneath the skin, they said they witnessed religious amulets, scarifications, emerge to the surface of the skin. And he's saying, I feel it burning. What is this? What is this? And they're coming to the surface of the skin. Now, these entities are playing into our roles. And what they're doing is, okay, what are you willing to believe about me? Well, I'm willing to believe this. Okay. And they send us into these different pockets of ignorance where we're so dogmatic that the Catholics will never talk to the Jews about what they believe because their tradition's different, right? Mm-hmm. Vice versa won't happen. Even deeper than that, and there's a reason why I'm telling you this, Egyptology is not going to come out and say, hey, listen, I think we're fighting the same entities. That'll never happen.
Right.
Now, here's what they did. They transcended the microcosm of demonology, and they carved the Star of David in his chest. What? And then next to it is a cross. What? And then underneath that was an arching manifestation of Egyptian hieroglyphics. Now, God, I got chills. What this means is while people are doing TikTok to get famous, and I think I called an EVP, nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. I believe in it.
Right.
What I'm saying is what we're dealing with is so more advanced than that. Way more advanced. And what this tells them, number one, is that not all guides are guides. Number two, the beings that had manifested to him as guides manifested to him in an image of a UFO abduction. He was in a metal room, and they had flanked him on the right and left. And he said as he was talking to them, they appeared to be his guides. Well, shoot, they appeared to be grays too. Goes to your question. They appeared, different manifestations. Well, what had happened is he started asking them questions that they didn't like, poking around for more information. And then suddenly, when their hold of belief on him began to break off, that's when I got chills. Ooh. Then they changed their apparitions to what they really looked like. And then they threw him back into his body. And now he had a massive heart attack. And then he's got scarifications on his chest. So I believe they are the same beings.
So what's the lesson in that, Nathaniel? When they do that, when they throw him back into his body, he has a massive heart attack, they do that scarification. Is that basically just to say, not only do we teach you not to mess around on the astral plane, but don't come across us again, because this is just a little bit of what we can do back to you? Absolutely,
100%. Because like I said, demonology is so exclusive in its content and dogma that we really don't know what they're doing. I mean, look what they did. They used our own amulets as a mathematical equation against us. Right? Where's the Egyptologist at the Paracon teach? Hey, listen, these are symbols. This is what it means. No, right? Because again, what they're doing is they're eclipsing that microcosm. It's so much bigger than this and what we've been taught. And so what I've been pointing the finger at and saying, hey, listen, guys, we need to think like them. We have to. Mm-hmm. We need to follow the rules they're playing, right? Because we can go in there with the Holy Cross and think everything's fine. They're way beyond that.
Let me ask you a question here, because a few years ago, there was a news story that came out, and it said that a few experiencers had called the name of Christ to the aliens that they were experiencing and managed to drive those aliens away.
Yes, now, there's a book I have on that about it.
Okay, good. The reason I asked this question is because it sort of relates to what we're just talking about here now. If they're using our religious symbols against us, which we consider holy or a holy relic, why is it the name of Christ would drive away an alien, but our relics mean nothing to them? Is it because there's no faith behind the relic, but there is faith in the word?
Okay, so this is very interesting. My dad's a pastor, and I've been dogging him about this question too, to the point where it's like, I don't want to talk about it anymore because it doesn't make any sense, does it? It makes no sense at all when you get down to it.
Right.
All right, so here's some of my case studies. I had a lady that said that she called on Jesus during an abduction, and he manifested to her as Jesus. It's going to blow your mind. However, it did not manifest to her as the historical Jesus, right?
Okay.
The olive-skinned Jewish rabbi.
Right.
No.
Right.
It came to her as what she would perceive Jesus to be. Whoa, what? So literally imagine this, stepping into your mind and saying, okay, what would, if Jesus were to manifest to you, what would you think he looked like? And then it manifested to her. So it wasn't the Jewish Jesus. It was like the Swedish Presbyterian Jesus, right?
Okay.
The one that never existed.
Right.
But only existed in the four walls of her mind and imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And so even deeper, she called on the name of Jesus. The entity manifested as Jesus, held his hand out. He showed her, he said, all seed. Sounds like a demon, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. All seed is mine. She, since that time, she said 6 miscarriages.
Jeez.
Right? Let's go even deeper. This is a couple of years ago. This is why I stopped researching and I just, went to Rhode Island. Forget this. I got to get my mind out of it. So reading the case study in the book Beyond UFOs, where a lady called on Jesus, right? She was she loved God, went to church faithfully. She had been being abducted as a young girl. She's now in her 40s. And the entities were building their energy in the room. She knows this experience. She's done it many times. And she starts praying the Lord's Prayer, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Boom, her eyes rolled back in her head. Now tell me. Right? What this does is it pushes us to hypothesize of their faith. Well, maybe they didn't believe it enough, right? Well, maybe she was in sin or something. What this does, and I deal with my own dad, God love him, is it forces us to create a situation where it shouldn't have worked anyway. Mm-hmm. Right? By assuming their purity, assuming their faith in God, all of these things. What we know, though, is that some of them not only don't believe in him, I'll manifest to you as him. Right?
Wow.
See, we're feeding into lies that are propagated by these entities. Case in point, haunting in Connecticut. Mm-hmm. We were taught that if you put up a crucifix in the room, they can't get into the room. Then why did the thing remove it?
Yeah.
That's even worse.
Yeah.
So again, what it seems like is that they're giving us enough manifestation to fulfill our own dogmas. But when it comes down to it, what do they believe in? See, Sinistrata of Amino was a Franciscan priest, and he was walking on a dirt road praying, and an entity manifested to him. Mm-hmm. Just they came across each other in passing, and it scared him. So he starts pulling his amulets out. Here's my cross. Here's my prayer. Here's my holy water. Here are all of the defenses I was taught against you. And the entity looked at him and said, word for word, I don't even know what you're talking about. Doesn't move me. And Sinistrari, to his own credit, said, okay, so then you're a pagan demon. What? Right. So what we have to do again is we have to look at all cultures, all possibilities, and then create a hypothesis. Because it's just like I had a case a while ago. I did a show, and a lady knew I was going to be on the show. She called in. Mm-hmm. She said, "Okay." She goes, "I was in bed one night, and she said my husband appears to me at the side of the bed, coerces me into a physical relationship." And she's like, I enjoyed it. He enjoyed it. Gets off the bed. He looks at me. And when he looks at me, she starts realizing that there are certain inconsistencies with his facial features.
Weird.
It's just the same technology as a gray.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the same shape-shifting aspect. And so then it looks at her, and then he starts to pick up. She's realizing, oh, wait a minute. Oh, my God. You are not my... And then it just tilted its head, grinned, transitioned into a smoky apparition, and then floated out of the hallway. Then it's again, extreme state aspect of the phenomenon. She realizes, okay, I've been had. Something occurred here. And she looks over, and her husband's just been asleep the whole time. So the idea, are they grays? Okay, why are they grays? They appear as. Okay. Now, I need to hit this on the nail, too. Look here, guys. Just because it was real doesn't mean the being wasn't lying. It can be perceived real, and it could be real. However, there can also be a measure of propaganda laced within the experience itself. When you get into witch era literature, we have case studies of women being abducted by demons. Thought they're aliens. You see what I'm doing here?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They were being abducted by aliens. The husbands were rolling over in the middle of the night to go pee or something, and they had placed, listen to the perception and the language being used by these ancient demonologists. They had placed a familiar spirit that looked like the wife in bed next to them. The real wife was being flown to a sabbat where they thought they were copulating with demons and corpses. Now, to their perception, it was 100% real. This is going to be incredible. Is this all right? Am I rambling?
No, you're not rambling. This is very interesting. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the experience was real. The perception of it was not. So what was happening is they thought they were being intimate with corpses and demons. Now, according to the data, what was happening is there was a fuzzing in the frequency. And for a fleeting moment, they're looking around, and what they thought they were being intimate with was not at all what they were experiencing. They were being poked and prodded by metallic objects that were made according to a measure of a man. Woo! So was it real? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But what was, again, the entity of the phenomenon was masking itself. Now, in that situation, all you had to do is speed it up a couple hundred years. That's an alien, isn't it?
Yes.
No?
Yeah.
Woo, right?
Yeah.
You're picking up what I'm putting down. So we've got to test these things deeper than just, do they fit my dogma? They scoff at that, and they'll use it and weaponize it against us.
As we're sitting here talking about this, it stokes up a memory of mine. And we were talking off air about a good friend of mine who passed away 10 years ago this week, Father Andrew Calder, a fellow demonologist. We were at Waverly Hills. We were doing a trip to Waverly Hills. Back in the day, Darkness Radio did ghost hunting trips to different classic locations around the country. We had about 200 people with us out at Waverly Hills. And Father Calder was one of the guest speakers on the trip. We were out there with the guys from the Ghost Hunters TV show and some other featured guests, Mark and Debbie Constantino and others. And I was in a group with Father Calder, and we were near the morgue. I believe it was near the morgue. And something wasn't right. There was like a smell of sulfur in the air. And he had put down, I believe it was just as an experiment, put down a vial of holy water. Just put it down on a table. And there was a group of about, I'd say 10 to 15 of us that were with him. And we sat and we watched this vial of holy water start to empty itself.
What's that tell you?
Right? And as you're telling these different encounters, it brings me right back to that mind-blowing encounter at Waverly. Mm-hmm. And people have asked me over the years, how is that possible? You know, how does an entity empty a vial of holy water? And up until now, I haven't had an answer. Now I do.
Yeah, and to a degree, it grieves me. Make no mistake, that grieves me.
Yeah. Because
now it's how much of this has been propaganda. How much of it is them tempting? In my book, It's Getting Across, I call it the temptation of belief. When these beings manifest as an alien, the question is asked subconsciously, do you believe I'm an alien? Yes, I do. When we manifest as a former lover, do you believe I'm your lover? Oh, yes, I do. Then now it's going to act as that entity. I'm stepping into it now. I'm going to act as what that entity is. So some things do work, but it doesn't mean we know why. They just work. And so what I've been doing, and I'm only 34, but I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. And then hopefully when I die, and I don't know if I'll be reborn or whatever, I hope to God I'll be doing this in the next life. Because again, they're masking themselves. Mm-hmm. And it's up to demonologists especially, I feel, to look behind the veil and stop groping in the darkness of deceit. They're feeding and weaponizing. Like this, I don't know, man. I'm real passionate about it. And I think that we're getting closer to at least some truth. But the deeper we get into it, the more we get in their way. And that could be dangerous.
That's understandable, Nathaniel. You know, I have to ask you this. If it weren't for that somewhat supernatural sense you have of being able to discern what these things are, how would you be able to trust what is what when you're approached by one? How would you be able to trust whether it is alien, whether it is demon, whether it is former lover, former friend, former family member or family member? How would you be able to discern what it is from what it isn't?
I would question it. I question everything, especially manifestations. Manifestations are often, again, propaganda. What they'll do, I liken it to a person stepping into a pool of water, and we're looking at the ripples. We're not looking at the person. Mm-hmm. It's the one causing these things to occur. So there is something behind what we're perceiving. That's why we research. I remember a time when I was engaged to my ex, and I had gotten off work on a Friday night, was wore out. I ate dinner, went straight to bed. About 3 a.m, I'm in the deepest sleep I've ever been in, and I have a nightmare, but it was unlike any other nightmare. It was a spiritual attack. In the dream, there's an entity straddling me. How about that?
Okay.
And she looked exactly like my ex if you were to put her in a room and turn the lights off. Long hair, same body frame, everything, same height and weight. And in this dream, I realized that this is a succubi. It's trying to get a response out of me. And so I'm looking at it, but it's a presence there too. It wasn't just some entity that, okay, it's a manifestation. I could see it. Mm-hmm. I felt it. It was spiritual. Now, here's another aspect of the whole other show. I perceived it to be a dream. When I woke up, it was there.
Oh.
So are they using this dimension to reach our dreams? Or are they using dreams to manifest into this dimension? Secondly, so I wake up and I see this entity, and it's on me. It's looking down at me. Like, it's not. And at first, when my eyes adjust to darkness, I'm thinking it's Ellie, my ex. Ellie, is that you? Is that you? You know, and I'm doing this. Like, is that you? You know?
Right.
And it takes one leg, just like, you know, it would in any situation like that. Takes one leg, gets off me, and then she looks at me and goes like this.
Oh.
And then she disappears in the darkness. And then my hand finds my ex's back, and then she wakes up, and she's going, "What do you want? Like, what's going on?" And I said, "That wasn't you?" "No."
Oh, weird.
So we have deeper aspects of the phenomenon to investigate. And these may, and I'm going to throw this out there because I know we're about to end it, but
yep.
These may be the very entities that are in charge of near-death experiences. Dude, these entities know who died, and they can mirror their own apparitions to the point that these people can manifest in the same clothes they died. So we are not the superior species here. Whatever we're dealing with is vastly more advanced than us. You realize what I just said? Well, I lost a friend. I'm not saying I did, but I lost a friend, and I get abducted, and that friend manifests in the same clothes they died in. And I didn't even know it till I went to the family and asked them, "Oh yeah, he died in the red shirt and jeans." How did they know that? So we got a problem here. Are they hunting souls? Are they hatching? I'm gonna throw everything out there right now because I know it's gonna be like a finale. Are they hatching consciousness just to steal it out of a fetus? Are they hunting souls? Well, what's going on here? You know, so that's what my research is all about now. So, wow. Sounds like you're not just sitting on your laurels and eating donuts there, Nathaniel. That's for sure. I'll tell you. I look like it sometimes, but I put the work in, man.
Yeah,
it's fun though. I enjoy it.
That's for sure. We're going to put a link up too to the Ghost Notes on the Leak Project channel. Which is an interesting video that Nathaniel has out there that he's in. The books are A Moment Called Man in the Skin That Crawls. We'll have links to those two books as well in the description of this program. Nathaniel Gillis has been our guest, demonologist, and I'll tell you, man, if this program doesn't have your wheels turning, I don't know what's going to keep your wheels turning as far as what's out there in the paranormal. Nathaniel, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on Darkness Radio today.
Thank you for having me, and it's been an honor. I had a blast, and you guys have a good week. Yeah,
and let's do it again soon, because I think there's more to talk about. Most definitely. Awesome. Folks, I want to thank you so much for joining us for yet another good week of Darkness Radio here. I want to thank our guest from True Crime Tuesday, Kirsten Parsons Hathcock, for joining us on True Crime Tuesday. I want to thank Mandy Leone from Ring of Honor Wrestling for joining us on Supernatural News this week. Of course, I want to thank our guest today, Nathaniel Gillis, for joining us today as well. I want to thank our sponsor for the week, Microdose Gummies. If you want to get out of pain, if you want to get out of anxiety, if you want to help with your workouts, Microdose Gummies is available right now. They ship nationwide, and it works by, of course, microdosing THC to a level where you're getting out of pain, but you are not, of course, getting that loginess that you get from THC. Microdose Gummies, of course, is available nationwide. To learn more about microdosing THC, go to microdose.com. Use the code DARKNESS to get free shipping and 30% off your first order. Links can be found in the show description. But again, that's microdose.com, code DARKNESS. And folks, I do want to remind you one more thing. I remind you every weekend, but please take care of yourself and each other. Go out there, help your fellow man and woman this weekend. Do something nice for somebody. If you see somebody who's struggling a little bit out there, take 5 minutes, give them a helping hand, and be sure to make the world a little bit better place. Leave it better than what you found it. I believe that we can turn things around on this earth, and we can make it a little bit better for each other, and we can start by doing it this weekend. I know I'm going to do that for somebody, and as your buddy Timmy would ask, do it for your buddy Timmy if you need any excuse whatsoever to help somebody out this weekend. Join us again next week for another great week of shows. We'll see you on Tuesday for True Crime Tuesday. For Beer City Bruiser, I'm Tim Dennis. We'll see you next week right here on the Best in Paranormal Podcasting. This is Darkness Radio.